Welcome to the Recovery Stories podcast, bringing you stories of hope, healing, and triumph over the bondage of addictions, mental health struggles, trauma, and dysfunctional family systems. Our courageous storytellers have chosen to live their journey out loud in order to show others that they don't have to suffer in silence. The stories you will hear are raw, real, and may involve graphic and triggering content. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or are ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 877-351-7504 or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer. I'm so excited to be here and thrilled to introduce to you all a longtime friend of mine, fellow world changer in recovery, Keoni. Welcome to Recovery Stories, and thank you so much for being willing to come on here and share your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patrick. I'm always excited and just full of love and honor to be able to share my story of recovery and sobriety. It's meant a lot to me. You mean a lot to me. A lot of people on this stream mean a lot to me. So I hope I look good to you, and I'm not getting too old, and we keep trudging this road together.
Dude, that's what it's about, right? And man, I'm just so glad you're here. I'm so grateful for you. You have meant a lot to me in my recovery, and I think one of the things you just hit on is how powerful that as we trudge the road, the fact that we have community and brotherhood, sisterhood, and that common bond, and so it's great that we're both getting to live lives of happiness, joy, and freedom. So it wasn't always that way for you or me, but we're here to talk about you. So tell us a little bit about your life at the beginning. What was the family life like for you? What family were you born into? What was the picture?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in California, Northern California. My parents were, my mom's Hawaiian and my dad is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian surfer guy from California, and he brought my mother from Hawaii over to California when she was actually pregnant with me. So I grew up in California. They were great parents. They were busy parents. I mean, I grew up in a time where, the economy was, growing. And so my dad worked a lot and didn't have as much time for us. My mom, she did the best she could. For what she knew, because she kind of got drug into it kind of young, about 19. So she was a young mother. And yet for some reason, I just didn't have the discipline that I needed. My brothers, I have two brothers, Keoni and Keola. They do not have a problem or never had a problem with alcohol or drugs. So
where do you on that lineup? Are you the youngest, oldest, middle?
I'm the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the middle. And so, for some reason, they were able to handle a lot of difficult situations. For me, it seemed like I was in a lot of fear from a young age without that disciplinary figures in my life all the time. So, living uncomfortable, being scared to go to school, just scared of kids, believe it or not. And it was like something inside of me just wasn't comfortable. And it was crazy because at about 12 is when I first had a drink. And I remember it well. And it did. It really made me feel better. I felt 100 times better. So, I just started using that most of the time just to feel comfortable in my own skin back in the day. My parents, they weren't alcoholic, they weren't addicts, so they didn't really bother me or understand because I was good at hiding it for a long time. And
So let me
So
ask you a question right there, Keoni. So,
yeah,
you're talking about this, discomfort in your own skin, being restless and irritable and fearful, right?
yeah,
And I think it's something that so many of us, either in recovery or future recovering people, can identify with
yeah.
on a big level. Um, but I'm curious, what was your picture or understanding of your place in life? Like, yeah, you can identify, I don't like the way I feel. But at that time, had you been exposed to somebody else and said, hey, I think that person feels like I do. I think that person struggles like I do. And they're finding a solution to make things better. Or did you feel isolated in this feeling of discomfort, discontent, and irritability all up until that point where you found solution at 12 years old?
Huh. Great question, Patrick. So what I felt like was I was being pressured to be, somebody that I wasn't, and the cool thing about growing up in California is there was a lot of young people that felt like me. So I kind of gravitated because my dad wanted me to be a jock. He's an ex-football player. I was a good sized kid. He said, "You're going to play football," and somewhere inside of me, really didn't want to do that. Didn't want to be with some of those kids. They kind of bullied me until I just became mean, and I was bigger than them because that's what bullying does. It just makes you mean. And so what I did was I kind of just congregated with the kids that were smoking weed. Kind of what would be deemed the dark kids. Back in the day. So I really didn't isolate. What I did was found more people like me. I didn't know what I was doing then. Obviously, we're 12, 13, whatever, 14. I didn't know what I was doing. I just felt comfortable with them, and they were like me, come to find out, all these years later. Some of us still stay in touch, and it's pretty interesting. Some of them are not with us anymore either. So or in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've definitely found people early on like me. There wasn't a shortage in California area where I was at of young people like me.
Wow. I
Yeah.
think it's a great example of, we seek this connection with other human beings, even if it's over our, I guess, our suffering, right?
Yeah.
We find solution, even if it's not healthy for us, others that are suffering the same. So that's what you were doing. And so at that point, let's say start back at where you're 12, and that's the place where you started experimenting. Take us on forward from that point.
Yeah. So my introduction to alcohol was it wasn't a good experience. I coming from that feeling of that I need to be the best from my dad, kind of, or just, you need to do the best in what you do. When I got handed a drink, I was like, I'm going to show them, So I just chugged it, and it was a lot,
Yeah.
and I don't really remember much. I just remember waking up in a dry creek bed, and thank God it wasn't the time when we have flooding or bigger lakes or rivers. I would have probably been passed away early. But it was dry in Cali, and there was water. But I woke up and I kind of had my head in the water. So that was my first real
Wow.
experience. Yeah. And everybody was gone, and I don't blame them for leaving. There was probably 5 guys there with me, and when I woke up, nobody was there. I probably scared them.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, I remember walking home, and I felt really, really bad. Like, oh my gosh, my parents are going to kill me, and they're going to smell me, and all this stuff. But I snuck into my room, and without them noticing me, and I got under the covers, and it was still daytime. And I was sitting in there, and I was going, what was that? What happened and everything. And somewhere in the, inside, I was like, I really can't wait to try that again, to try to see if I can remember, what happened. And so what I did was, from then on, I didn't try to drink as much. I kind of started to watch as a young person what we can call managing our drinking.
Yeah.
I started that young, and so starting off, really having an experience like that kind of helped me to start to say, hey, if I only do this much, I'll get this feeling, and so on, which started a really a path of, not good, not a good life.
Right.
Yeah.
It basically started that systematic pattern of identifying, I don't like the way I feel, I'm going to modify. And if I do this much, I can do that. I can feel this if I do that. And basically, like, this is my toolbox for manicuring my feelings or the lack, or getting me to the place where I have a lack of them.
Yeah, that's it.
Man. So, it's interesting you talk about your first experience there being one with kind of significant consequences, right? It wasn't a benign experience. So what, speaking of consequences, from there forward, how did it affect your education? Did it interfere? How did consequences start to come into play? And, what were the next couple of years like?
Yeah. And that just really, my heart just kind of sank because, that it really did hinder me from doing a lot of things, a lot of goals I had, a lot of inspiration, because, I was inspired then. I was young, I was a good athlete, my dad was right. After I got a little bit over myself, and kept pushing forward, I became a great football player. I had great coaches. I didn't have a problem listening to good coaching. And, the big problem is my drinking progressed, and the partying progressed. And there's no shortage of kids wanting to have kegger parties when I was growing up in California, The thing about it is that I didn't know is once I started, I couldn't stop. And it started affecting my, my play. I've been hung over many, many times playing football. I was a starting fullback. And the crazy thing is that we're in California, it gets hot. I would dehydrate. They'd have to take me out of the game. I'm sure my coaches smelled it. There's a couple other guys that were just like me on the team. And here's the starting group. We partied too hard on Friday night and we're dehydrated, because of heat. And they having to take us out of the game. And yet, we played well enough that we could continue until, obviously it ends. The gig's up. You can't drink like that and be a high performance athlete. At least not from my standpoint. And that's where that was going. It was going towards, they were grooming us to be, professional football players. That's just what they do in California. So, and I have guys that I went and played with that played in the NFL and are coaching in the NFL. So, it definitely hurt my chances towards my future in that aspect. Bottom line is once I couldn't play football, I didn't want to go do school. So I actually dropped out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was,
I think a lot of people listening, a lot of us can identify with that same experience of maybe not necessarily football, but, getting in the way of education and feeling like a failure because we, had to pull out of school. So when you left school, what did that do in terms of shame and guilt and, kind of, propelling, did it propel your addictive patterns, and what did that look like for you?
So, when you party and are kind of a jock, well, maybe not even a jock, but just partying a lot around a lot of people, for me, I got a young lady pregnant. So, I was a father at 18, and as a father kind of figure in my head, I needed to step up. So I got busy working, blue collar working, moving furniture, and that kept my time. I was doing 70 hours a week. I was smoking weed. I was trying not to, do the bad stuff, which is funny. Yet I was smoking. They weren't drug testing us, so I had a baby and I'd smoke weed. I didn't have time to grieve. I didn't have time to even worry about that stuff. I don't know how many people out there know or can relate to having a child young or having a child at all. You get busy. And yeah, that's what I did. So I didn't. So my story is kind of an interesting one. I kept myself busy. I never grieved, and I felt nothing. My way of doing it was getting busy, smoking, drinking, something to just not feel, not. And that's what happened at 18. I was a father because of, and it's a direct result of my partying. I didn't want to be a father, to be honest. I just wasn't making right decisions.
So, moving on, you have a kid, and what did that, what did life look like those following years, and what was it like for you showing up being a dad, and did addiction take its course? What happened next?
Yeah, I loved being a father. That little girl, my daughter Haley, changed, which was it was like a spiritual experience, having her at the hospital. I'll never forget it. Even though I was drinking in the parking lot and smoking some weed with my friends while my girlfriend was in labor for 20 hours. But when the time came, I went up there, and I'll never forget it, because when I went into that room, I was buzzed. There's no doubt. When they put her in my arms, something happened to me. It took every bit of high out of me, and it's crazy because I really wanted to change my life. This little girl in my arms, I wanted to change my life, and I really made a good effort at it, and I loved that life. I loved, going to work, coming home, even though we were so young, being a family, being a family. The problem was, and I look back on it now with all the, the work I've done, and I didn't have a defense against the first drink or drug. I had no defense against it when it came knocking at just the right time, like me and the girl were having an argument, or I'm overworked, or overworked and arguing with my girl. And, it's just like, it's the perfect time. It comes knocking. It's like, hey, why don't you try this? You haven't done this in a while, maybe and that's exactly what happened. I was good for about 2 years. I was about a 2-year. I would go 2 years, get my life going, and then no defense. It would come knocking right about 2 years, and I would veer off. And
when you talk about 2 years, when you talk about 2 years, do you mean during that time you would keep consequences at bay and basically you use pot or alcohol?
Yeah, moderate. Yeah,
just moderate.
Yeah, just moderate.
Gotcha.
Just moderate. Yeah.
So, all right. So we hit the end of that 2-year span. What happened next?
So I'm going to be vulnerable here. And I love you guys and the people that I'm talking to, and that's why I can do this, and it's hard. It's hard because I don't necessarily like the man that I was totally. I don't regret anything anymore, yet there's some parts of me and things that I've done that am not happy with, and the problem was when I did certain drugs or did enough, I all bets were off. Like, no matter how much I loved my ex-wife, which you might hear about, or these girls in my life I did love, I would cheat. And, unfortunately, that's what happened. And once that happened, I've had I'm grateful these women I met, because they were good women, and they just didn't put up with that, and that's like a deal breaker. So, that's what happened, and I had to move on. I got kicked out of that family, and it was never the same. That's what it did to me. It made me into a person I wasn't, because I swear to you, Patrick, I would never wanted to do that to them. Never.
Yeah.
Never. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that. I think so many of us can relate that, our using and addictive behaviors took us farther and deeper than we ever intended on going, or in our hearts, who we really truly are. So what, from there, what did you do?
Yeah. So, I moved away. I couldn't take it. I couldn't take having a daughter that I couldn't see as much, or I couldn't, wake up with. Even if her mother was a great mother. She's a nice gal. I could see her, but it wasn't the same, and so I thought I could move away from the pain. I thought you could really like relocate and everything will be okay. I'll just start a new family. That doesn't work. And I've done it, and I have two beautiful sons. Yet it still doesn't work. The pain stays with me, stays with you, and they say that where you go, there you are. It just took me a while to get that. So I moved around, Patrick, quite a bit, and tried to set up shop in different places, and started to do real good. Like I said, I'm like a 2-year, I'll just build the life up, and it'd be looking really good. My family would always say to me, Keoni, man, you have no problem, doing good when you don't drink. And I'm like, just how do you do that? Inside I'm going, you're right, but I don't know how not to drink, man. I don't know what you're talking about. But I never said that. I did a lot of thinking out, I never said the words to anyone.
Of course, because once you say it, you have that fear. It's like, once I say it, the gig is up, and I'm gonna be carted off.
I'll be carted off. That's.
Yeah. I don't know. That was my fear anyway. I wasn't about to go there with voicing it, but internally, I can identify with you there. Definitely internally, man, it. And you also can't. I talk about the forever concept. You think about, I really can't effectively do this for the rest of my life and live for a long time and do things successfully. So that means I know the substance and the alcohol is going to have to go, but I can't, the forever concept, like I can't comprehend doing all day, every day, without managing my emotions and feelings with with that outside influence, right?
Yes.
So, all right, moving forward.
Yeah.
So you something's wrong. You don't want to voice it. I'm guessing some big consequences came your way at some point that forced a motivational shift in your willingness to ask for help.
Yes. So, we haven't talked about the selfishness. Excuse me, but I'm gonna tell you, a guy like me who started fairly young and never really came up for air one way or another, used some substance, always was, high, in some form or fashion,
Mm-hmm.
you get selfish really, really, deeply selfish. So what happened to me was I had plenty of consequences throughout that time, jail, divorce, bad business partner, yet those weren't enough. When you get as selfish as I was, you really don't see or want to change until something physically happens to you. And that's what happened. I finally became what was considered a bum. I was a street dweller, even though I still was kind of keeping it together enough that I could, you know, stay a night in a hotel here or over here, them old hotel hells, I'm talking, some of us know about these. And it wasn't until I wasn't even welcome in those that I said, oh my gosh, there's a real problem. I can't manipulate anymore. I can't, this isn't cute anymore. I'm not good looking enough anymore to get by with, my whatever I thought in my head, right? That's in my head. So that's was the bottom for me, was literally sitting in the gutter in Phoenix. In the gutter, I was on the curb, and the kind of people that you don't want to mix with had took my phone and my wallet or my money and left me out on the curb. And that's probably was a good thing, because the next thing that they could have done is probably something terrible to me, because I deserved it to them. But, stripping me of everything and leaving me on the curb was what they thought was good enough. And I had a moment.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a moment.
So what'd you do?
Well, I was blubbering. I started like crying, and I've had some God influence in my life. I went to Catholic high schools because of good football teams, and so I'd heard of God. I wasn't following God, or I never got on that train all my life. So yet somewhere inside of me, and it's funny because we talk about, the basic fundamental of God is in all of us. I think that's what it was, because I felt this, that, I need to pray. I'd heard of praying. I was 37 years old at that time. We prayed, and I never believed it, but I've said prayers, so yeah, I was whimpering and I was crying, and this time I meant it. I asked God for help. I said, how did I get here again? I remember what I said. I said, how did I get here again? And please help me. God, please help me. And I was crying. Tough guy, Keoni, 37. Been through everything, and I'm blubbering and asking God for help.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
So I felt I hadn't talked to a lot of people. I've been wandering the streets in Phoenix for I want to say a year or so. So when I was like that, I wasn't calling anybody, and I had family, and I had kids. So I had called my dad and said, hey Dad, and he's like, where you been? And everybody's looking for you. And I'm like, oh Dad, I'm in bad shape. And he to this day, we're friends, and we have we made amends, and we have a great relationship. And he told me that was the first time you ever asked for help, son. I was 37 years old, and I thought I had asked for help, Patrick, but there I go thinking again, right? I never said the words, because my dad's not a liar. He's a good man. He's a good, honest, man, and does things right. And I believed him when he said it. I didn't know then, but he said I asked him for help. That I said, Dad, he sent me a letter, and it said that I said, Dad, I'm at the end of my line, or end of my rope. I can't do this anymore. I need help, just like that. And that's what happened. He said, your ex-wife is looking for you. Your kids are worried about you. You need to call them. And that was the next thing I did, was I called Bobby Ann, and said, hey, how are my boys? How are the boys? And she's like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm not doing good, and that, for me to tell her that, was big, because I always wanted to make it seem like I was doing okay. And she said, we're worried about you. Can you get to Nashville? And I didn't have a cent. I was like, I'm not asking her for money. There's no way. I was too proud to have my ex-wife, give me a plane ticket. That wasn't going to happen. And that's probably what got me to the gutter, a lot of that thinking.
Yeah.
So what was very interesting is, and this is a God thing, and there's a lot of God things now, Patrick, in my life, and I know yet she goes, well, just get here, get to Nashville, and you will never believe. So there was a couple who I was doing drugs with that I had not visited in a while, because I thought they had a baby, and I thought, I don't need to be around. They need to get, they need to be good. Yeah. So I remember them, and I went over there, and they were welcomed me in, and they were still doing drugs, unfortunately, and I hope they're okay. I prayed for them, and we did drugs together, yet they were like, we're going to get you out of here. We're going to get you a plane ticket. You need to go get help, Keoni. And I'm like, your drug friends or drug, even some point drug dealer, he was saying, we're going to help you. And they bought me a ticket and dropped me off at the airport.
Wow.
They didn't go in with me.
Right. Well, we're going to go that far. Right. But wow, that's pretty cool. So, man. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So moving forward, you came to Nashville, got sober at a special place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, man. I think about that couple, and if they knew somewhere, they must have believed in God, and somewhere inside of them knew, because my life changed forever after I flew to Nashville. I mean, I've never been the same, Patrick. And that's why I say it's got to be a God thing, because there were so many different people that were shady characters in all our lives there, and they did that for me, so it's like, that's how I knew after I prayed, God started working. Mm-hmm. I asked, and I believed, and I wanted it. I mean not even fully believe, you guys. I just, something happened,
I think the big step that you took was voicing it, just asking for help. I mean, Clearly God had a big role to play, but when it comes to what you did, I think it was truly just, throwing your arms up and saying, hey, okay, I'll do something. I don't know what it is, but let me put a little foot in front of the other one.
That's right. I did do that. Yep.
So, man, that's awesome. So cool. And life today. So, I've had, like I said at the beginning, I've had the honor of walking alongside you in recovery for some years now. And, since close to the beginning, or at the beginning, and man, just tell us a little bit about what your recovery journey's been like.
Boy, it's fascinating. It's been so amazing. I remember early on, just hanging out with you and making friendships, and like, that didn't happen for me before, you guys. I moved around, the friends I made, but yet I was just taking it all in, every second of my sobriety, every moment I have took in from the beginning. And, that's why I think I feel like, I'm so filled with love, because when you live in the moment with every individual that you share with throughout your journey of recovery, if you really, really want it, you can take a bit of all that love from everyone with you, you know?
Yeah,
And it keeps you going and
that's right.
keeps you going. And my cup's full. I mean, Patrick, it doesn't, we've had some hard times, you guys, all of us this past year. Oh my goodness. Yet I'm filled with joy, and it's all because of the love of the people that I've met and still have in my life. No matter if I go to Mississippi, where I'm at, and the next journey on, and wherever, I have you with me, and I'm with you, and it's like with that was like that was the big hidden thing I needed. It was like I thought I had to go somewhere to get away or to be with that person, but I could have you here with me all the time. And recovery has taught me that.
Yeah, there's a big number of people that that you were talking about that you've taken love, that love from, and it piles up, and you could pick up the phone at any given point, and we'd be there. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I love how you worded that. I just want to say again, that if you really want it, you can pull some love from every one of those connections along the way, and it has made your cup full today.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. Yeah. So, okay, I got a couple of questions. What was the greatest fear you lived through in addiction? And then also, same question, but in recovery and sobriety, what was the greatest fear that you lived through? Because I'm going to kind of give some background for why I asked that question. Personally, I had a couple top fears, and one main very top fear that for me, in some ways, perpetuated my addiction. That I lived through in my addiction, and I faced some things in recovery that I never thought I could have faced sober. And I think there's a lot of hope there and ways that people can identify. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important, and why I want to ask you that.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. You're an inspiration, Patrick. Man, I just know the things you push through, and I love you, and that's incredible. So the greatest fear. Wow, I've never really sat back and thought about that. I was scared a lot, So what I did is I medicated a lot, so I didn't feel fear. I was like the type of dude that was like, okay, liquid courage was the thing, like I did things and I felt tough and I felt bulletproof. And so a man like me wasn't scared much, believe it or not, yet when he's intoxicated, yet there was a fear now that you say that. And I always had the fear of dying. I was, that was like, I was afraid to die. And that was my biggest fear, thinking about it now, with this question in the moment,
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting, I'll tell you, just in relation to that, actually, that was my top fear as well in addiction. And it's interesting. I think a lot of people I've talked to have said the same thing. And how ironic is it that we're living a lifestyle that we know deep down inside is killing us? And I don't know if you had this internal dialogue, but I did, in that I know this is hurting me, and it will kill me if I continue. But I'm too scared to live sober. I'm too scared of death, and I'm too scared of facing death for the potential thereof. sober. So if I have to die, I would rather do it and feel numb. And that's the mentality that I carried with me that perpetuated that.
Yeah. That's it.
Mentality, right?
That's it, man.
Yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah. So, all right. So moving on to sobriety, what was that biggest thing that you could say, that was so scary that you lived through that you would have never imagined being able to live through sober, make it to the other side?
Oh gosh. Well, it's like the flip of what I felt in my addiction, in the disease. Now I'm afraid of my friends dying, and my loved ones. So I was no longer afraid to die, yet I had, I had friends that were still struggling, or parents, that are getting old, and I don't know, if they've had this freedom that I have, and I just, there's this fear of, loss, even though I'm not afraid anymore. So that's been a big fear. It's still a big fear because I have a daughter and a family, and sons. And what if they, something happens to them? Or I've lost many friends in this road to recovery, and that's been hard. And so I guess, I'm not guessing. I really do feel a big fear of mine now, and there's not many, is of loss.
Yeah.
Of loss.
So, insert where I love to talk about our tools, and a lot of us come to recovery and move through recovery in different modalities of help, and whether it's 12 steps or other things, but we've all got some type of tools that are helping us. And so life from the point of inception is not easy. Even as babies, when we're born, we have to fight for air, and nobody ever gave us a promise that it was going to be easy. But I think the light I love to shine right here is that in that is the beauty that we have something to work with, and you have a wonderful toolbox that you utilize regularly to make it work and to make life work. So it's interesting. My next question for you is what is your greatest joy in sobriety? And I have a feeling I know what you're going to answer there.
My greatest joy is my relationship with God. Yeah. My greatest joy is my relationship with God today. And that's of my understanding. Nobody's pushed this on me to the fact where I gotta believe this way or else. I mean, had a lot of that when I was young and scared the crap out of me. This is something I came to with inside, and that's where my peace and my joy comes from.
That's awesome, and it shows. It really does. Absolutely. I think you're one of those people now that is given that little piece of love that you were talking about, helping fill other people's cup up as they go along and pass by. I know that's going to happen today with the people watching, but especially in all the lives you're touching every day in the work that you do. So, all right, last question. I always like to ask our guests, what would you say? What would you leave that man or woman who's struggling the same way you did, who's listening, watching today? What piece of encouragement do you want to leave them?
Oh man. So I had a guy that I reached out to through a family member last night message me in the middle of the night. And I had called him or messaged him on Facebook Messenger 7 days before. And I said, if you need anything, he's struggling with a meth addiction in California. And I said, if you need anything, call me. And he came back and he said, I'm doing okay. I'm doing good. Thanks. But, and that was it. And then last night or this morning, I woke up because California is ahead of us, and there was a message, and it was poorly written. Yet he tried to make up for it in another message, and he said, "Excuse me, sir. I just need some encouragement, some inspiration right now. Can you help me?" And my best advice is reach out to those that want to help and that have been down this road like me. Find me. If you message me, my name, you'll know my name. I will answer you. Reach out, and we will help pick you up, and I'll carry you until you can walk. And that's the truth.
Awesome. That's right. I always like to leave our podcast with a similar word of very simply put, if there's only one thing you do today to make a change, it would be to ask or tell someone. Ask for help or simply tell someone that you're struggling. Find somebody that you can trust and don't keep that secret any longer. So, man, really, really great advice. I know it changed your life for sure. So.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't quite the same. I got help forced onto me, and I'm grateful now that I did. But I'm always so excited to hear people's stories about when they actually took that step of asking for help themselves, because there's so much courage in that, and that courage is contagious.
Yeah. And I feel like it's not only helping them, it's helping us and me, and it's just that's the God piece, it's us helping one another. I believe that and people would say there's a lot of things that make God happy, but I think the one thing that grieves God's heart is us not helping one another, so
yeah,
that's it.
Man, you've got a purpose on your life, and it's clear. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. This has been really great. Thanks again for your time, and thanks for everyone who's watching, who stuck with us through this hour. And like we said, reach out for help if you or a loved one need it. You've got the resources and information. You can call us at Promises. You can reach out to Keoni. But there are people willing, waiting to take that hand if you reach it out. So,
that's right.
All right. With that, everyone, thanks again, and we are out.
For more information on today's episode, check out the show notes. Recovery Stories is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 877-351-7504 or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please share with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. We are grateful for you and hope that you have been encouraged by today's episode. As always, remember you are only one decision away from a completely different life, and it is never too late to start loving yourself.